Hello, this lesson is about the skill of interrupting. I know that many of you probably don't think about interrupting as having a skill or not having a skill. Interrupting is rude. That's what most of us are taught at at the knee of the adult that we were focused on as a young child. Um, and and now that I've had children and grandchildren, I can understand that because you have these young children who don't have any kind of sense of filter and everything. And so they've said, you know, don't interrupt. And so the message comes across that there's something wrong about interrupting. Um, and instead of, as an adult, having a more nuance about interrupting, now there's also a whole awareness that has come about in the last, I don't know, number of years about men interrupting women, particularly in business meetings, at a higher rate. So this is about being conscious of interrupting, being aware, being present, being choiceful about interrupting. That's implicit in underlying this practice of this strategy. And it is to interrupt for a certain purpose, to meet a certain need, not just because you have this urge that comes up in you. It's like to be able to identify and see those urges before they come up. And then in the simplest way of talking about it, of then just saying, then knowing, pausing for a second, knowing what your need is for interrupting, so that you can get the attention of the person you want, and that you can interrupt for connection, is the way that Rosenberg used to talk about it. So we want to interrupt in a way that isn't perceived as rude, that is perceived as contributing or valuable to the person. And we want to take all things in consideration, not just the words we use, but also gender issues and whatever the current cultural concerns are about this kind of thing. Now, an example of me interrupting is when I act as a mediator. I don't set up rules ahead of time and say, there'll be no interrupting. And I could tell you why that is, and maybe at another time I will. But at this point, what do I do if I don't talk about this ahead of time? Then what do I do? Well, when people interrupt, then I interrupt. When they begin to interrupt, is they begin to talk over each other. I interrupt them, their interruption, and I say, when you're both talking at the same time, or one of you is talking over the other one, I'm not able to follow what's going on, and I'm not able to support you in this mediation in the way that I understand you want me to. Would you be willing to talk one at a time? So that's an example of that I need very little time, because it's a familiar experience for me. I need very little time between when I see the conduct and I commence my interruption. I'm working from a script. Likewise, when you practice this kind of skill of interrupting, with time in meetings, you'll get to where you interrupt seamlessly, and since I have learned this skill and have developed a certain amount of proficiency, I don't have people, trying to tell me not to interrupt or not to do whatever. It's that they see by my ending with a request. You identify your need, end with a request, and that this action request that I'm asking of them, or a process request, how are you feeling, or would you tell me what you heard me say? That when all of that is put together and has a certain proficiency to it, that I don't have people objecting to me interrupting. Let me make sure that I want to. Well, and let me just talk a little bit about the benefits of this kind of interrupting. Is that you can be interrupting a person in a meeting, and you're saying, you guess what they're saying. Is this what you're wanting us to pay attention to? Is this what you're wanting us to understand? That kind of thing. Rarely does a person, I can't remember a time when a person has objected to me doing something like that, because they want to get their idea across, and they want you to hear them. And if you demonstrate interest, you demonstrate, and you've demonstrated that you're not getting it like the way they want to correct you. And that can go on many rounds. I've been in situations where people will just stay with me as long as I'm just not getting it, and they really want to hone in on just a certain thing they want to make sure that I get. And from that, I've learned that that not to worry about reflecting back exactly the exact nuance of what they want, but just to relax a little bit and to say it in the best way that I can, and then let them correct me or not. It helps the speaker be more confident that their message is getting across. It helps them revisit what they're saying midstream to where they can modify or clarify or use different words, or they can see that they're off track with you, and then they clarify what they're talking. So they want to. It also helps them be more succinct, and it helps them kind of drop into a more contemplative is the word that I want to use, but that's not quite what I mean. It's just a more focused communication, to where they really they know you're listening to them, and they want to say and communicate exactly what they want to communicate. And I mentioned this already, but before you interrupt, you want to be present as much as you can, and be clear about what need you're seeking to meet by interrupting. And then you want to communicate that to the person you're interrupting. So you want to say something like, excuse me. I really want to understand more clearly what you're saying. So would it be okay with you if I tell you what I'm getting, and then you tell me whether that's what you're wanting me to get from what you're saying? So you can ask something like that. And then, so that's the basic structure, is that you pause, identify your need, and then you state your need, and you end with a request of what you want them to do now that they've stopped talking. Okay, this completes this lesson on interrupting. Thank you for your time and your attention.